This is our time on Freedom with a roundup of Friday's top news stories. My name is Mikhail Baranov. Hello. At noon, Russian forces shelled the bus station in Novovorontsovka, Kherson region. As a result of this attack, a civilian was killed. 2 more people were injured. Russian occupiers struck Zaporizhzhia region with drones and guided bombs. According to local authorities, Russian forces deliberately targeted critical infrastructure. In Orikhiv, a municipal worker was killed. 2 more civilians were injured. 1 person was injured in Uliapol. There, the Russians attacked a passenger car with an FPV drone. Residential buildings in the city were also destroyed. Last night, Russia attacked the Odesa region again. According to local authorities, energy facilities were targeted by drone strikes. As a result of the attack, warehouse facilities and administrative buildings were damaged. Rescue workers quickly extinguished the fires. There were no casualties. 6 people were injured as a result of another Russian attack on Dnipro. Last night, the Russians struck the city with drones. 3 of the injured are in the hospital in moderate condition. A residential high-rise building was damaged. Its windows were blown out. The extent of the damage is still being clarified. Here's what Dnipro residents are saying about the Russian attack.
We went up to the apartment. Not a single one of the 6 windows survived. Half the frames are outside, half are inside the apartment.
It happened so suddenly. You know, just like that, nothing, and then everything. Dust everywhere, people screaming. There's nothing special here. Just peaceful people live here. And they got hit for no reason at all.
Russia launched almost 130 drones from 5 directions at Ukraine on Friday night. About 80 of them were Shahids, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. Ukrainian air defenders neutralized 94 drones in the north, south, and east of the country. Hits were recorded at 11 locations. There were 169 combat clashes on the front line in the past 24 hours. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the situation remains tense in the Pokrovsk direction. There, the defense forces stopped 58 attacks by Russian occupiers. 14 assaults were repelled in both the Sloviansk and Konstantinivka sectors. In the southern Slobozhansk and Kupiansk directions, 12 enemy attacks were repelled in each sector. In addition, military experts note the successes of Ukraine's defense forces on the Kupiansk bridgehead.
There are far fewer enemy troops in Kupiansk than in Pokrovsk. That's why the situation there is largely under our control. There's really no point in talking about the encirclement of Kupiansk at all. We've heard that objectives have been set to clear out those infantry groups that are in Kupiansk, and deadlines have been established. And I think that in the future, we'll definitely be seeing some good news from there. 1,170.
Russian occupiers were eliminated by Ukraine's defense forces on the front lines over the past day. Thus, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total combat losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale invasion have already reached almost 1,149,000 soldiers. In addition, yesterday a Russian tank and air defense systems, 2 armored combat vehicles, 13 artillery systems, as well as 67 units of enemy automotive and special equipment were destroyed. Long-range drones from the Main Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine's Ministry of Defense struck one of Russia's key petrochemical industry enterprises, the Sterlitamak petrochemical plant in Bashkortostan. The Main Intelligence Directorate clarified that the operation was carried out on the eve of November 6.
The plant produces goods for the needs of the Russian occupation army and the military-industrial complex of the Russian Federation. Specifically, ethanol, aviation gasoline, and synthetic polymers. As a result of the strike on the Russian petrochemical facility, a fire broke out in the Azidol production workshop. This is an additive for aviation fuel. The armed struggle continues. From the statement of the Main Intelligence Directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine on Telegram.
The Special Operations Forces of the Ukrainian Armed Forces confirmed the strike on logistics facilities and oil depots in temporarily occupied Crimea. On the night of November 6th, Ukrainian drones struck the Gvardiskaya oil depot, destroying a fuel storage tank. 2 railway trains with tank cars were also attacked. At the moment of impact, they were loaded with petroleum products. In addition, SOF drones struck several oil depots and fuel and lubricant storage facilities in Simferopol and the surrounding area. Tank farm facilities were destroyed. Fires broke out at the sites of the strikes. Due to the constant threat of Russian attacks, school children in Zaporizhzhia are studying underground in equipped shelters. These classrooms can withstand attacks from strike drones, missiles, and bombs. The rooms are equipped with fire safety systems, ventilation, and water supply. And most importantly, they have everything necessary to provide children with a quality education. Our correspondents visited one of these new underground schools in Zaporizhzhia. About 500 students have been attending classes at the new underground school for almost a month.
Such active socialization has begun. He comes home and tells us what new things happened today, what they talked about in class. He is very happy, and for us, this adaptation period went smoothly.
Due to the threat of Russian shelling, in-person classes in Zaporizhzhia schools were cancelled almost 4 years ago. Since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion, children have been studying remotely. Many met their classmates in person only when they came to the underground school.
These are children who, unfortunately, have been forced to study online since first grade. That's why, for them, coming to the underground school is like discovering a whole new world. Watching the children, I see that they are finally communicating with each other. This is real, live interaction. This is the beginning of school friendships.
Some students are still staying at home, so teachers continue to teach online lessons for them alongside in-person classes. They admit it's not easy, but after a few lessons, everything falls into place.
You organize your work in such a way that everyone gets enough attention. Modern technology helps us work really effectively. We can connect a laptop, we can hook up an interactive whiteboard, and at the same time, log in from a phone to check something. Distance learning taught us how to do all this. We can do anything.
The regular educational process can't be compared to online lessons. It's still too early to draw conclusions about how it will affect academic performance, but it's already clear that students are absorbing the material better, says the school principal.
Because the child is sitting in front of the teacher, they can see what's written on the board, and they have the opportunity to interact and respond in real time. They write in a notebook that the teacher can see, and they can communicate with their classmates. So, if you look at it from this perspective, the results really are better.
The school is built according to anti-radiation shelter standards. The classrooms are located 7 meters underground, with reinforced concrete ceilings covered by a layer of waterproofing and soil. The school is equipped with a ventilation and air purification system, and in case of a power outage, there are autonomous power sources.
The children don't even notice whether there's an alert here or not. Whatever is happening on the surface, you can't hear it down here. It really is safe and comfortable here. The underground school is yet another symbol of our indestructibility, our resilience, and our belief in victory.
By the end of the year, 24 underground schools are planned to open in the Zaporizhzhia region. And in almost 150 more schools, underground shelters will be equipped. Thanks to this, more than half of the region's students can attend in-person classes. Ola Pritikin and Boris Yakovenko from Zaporizhzhia for Freedom TV channel.
Russia is capable of launching a limited attack on NATO territory at any time. This was stated by German Lieutenant General Alexander Sulfrank in an interview with Reuters. According to him, it could be a small attack near the Russian border. Whether Moscow decides to do this will depend on the positions of Western allies. He added that the Kremlin's goal is both to provoke NATO and to assess the alliance's response.
We have powerful armed forces. Under our protection are land, air, sea, cyber information domains, and space. And all the capabilities we already have today will be further strengthened. That is, they will be modernized and brought in line with our plans so that, if necessary, we can truly defend our country successfully.
The plan to counter hybrid threats was discussed in Germany at a meeting of the newly established National Security Council. It was held for the first time under the chairmanship of Chancellor Friedrich Merz. In addition, the issue of Germany's strategic dependence on critical raw materials, such as oil and gas, was raised. Larissa Petruk will tell you more about how Europe is uniting and preparing to counter threats coming from Russia.
Europe continues to prepare its civilian population to repel potential military threats from Russia. A program called On Alert has been launched in Poland. The pilot project for comprehensive defense training will begin on November 22nd. Next year, the country's Ministry of National Defense plans to train about 400,000 people through various programs. When registering for the training, participants can choose from 4 modules: a basic safety course, a survival course, a medical course, and a cyber hygiene course.
Adult citizens of Poland are eligible to participate. The program will run until December 14th. No more than 25,000 people will undergo the training. All Polish citizens will be able to participate in the program: children, elementary and high school students, company employees, either individually or in groups, as well as retirees. The program will be implemented by 132 units, mainly based in the territorial defense forces, with the participation of the Operational Command of the Armed Forces, according to the news portal RMF24.
Europe remains under NATO's reliable protection, despite Washington's recent decision to withdraw part of the American contingent from EU countries. This was stated by the bloc's Secretary General, Mark Rutte, during his visit to Romania. Let me remind you, the country's airspace has repeatedly been violated by drones from the Federation, and in the new National Defense Strategy for 2026 through 2030, Russia is identified as the main source of hybrid threats to Bucharest.
If there is an attack from anyone, whether it's Russia or anyone else who attacks NATO or specifically Romania, not only will the Eastern Shield come to your aid, not only will the forward land forces come to your aid. All of NATO will come to your aid, with its fleet of F-35s, all its naval forces, and all its ground forces. That's how NATO works. In the end, if this country is attacked, 31 more countries will come to Romania's aid.
Russia is most likely also behind the recent provocations in Belgian airspace, according to the country's intelligence services. Let me remind you, on November 4th, airports and a military airbase were closed due to the appearance of supposedly unidentified drones. In connection with the incidents in Brussels, an emergency meeting was held with key government ministers and security service leaders.
I believe we need more counter-drone measures, and that's exactly what I'm proposing. I have a concrete plan. Yes, we're working on the funding. We're also very active on the international level. We have many good neighbors from nearby countries, NATO allies, and they're all trying to help us. So that's really good news. We need capabilities, we need equipment, real firepower, and of course, the most advanced technologies. Because the threats we face are real and long-term. Russia's unprovoked war against Ukraine is the clearest example of such a threat. But the danger posed by Russia won't disappear with the end of this war. For the foreseeable future, Russia will remain a destabilizing force in Europe and in the world.
Meanwhile, the Kremlin traditionally shifts the blame onto NATO countries and denies its own provocations. This is pointed out by analysts from the Center for Countering Disinformation under the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine. Russian media are actively spreading fake news that NATO is supposedly practicing a scenario to blockade the Kaliningrad region during its exercises.
They bring up the Baltic countries. Moreover, this is done not only to escalate the situation, but also to create backup scenarios in case a ceasefire becomes necessary. The motivation is that Russians need to regroup and prepare for a war against the Baltic countries and Northern Europe, supposedly using the current war as a starting point. That's where the threats are coming from. The
Center for Countering Disinformation is convinced that this is how Russian propaganda tries to create the illusion of a so-called Western threat among Russian citizens. Analysts believe that the regime needs new enemies to keep the level of pro-war sentiment in society from dropping. Larissa Petruk for Freedom TV Channel.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban arrived in the United States for a visit. In Washington, he has a meeting scheduled with U.S. President Donald Trump. According to The Guardian, citing sources, Orban's top priority is to invite Trump to Hungary. After all, as the Hungarian Prime Minister's advisors believe, a visit from the head of the White House could boost Orbán's electoral standing ahead of next year's parliamentary elections. At the upcoming meeting with Trump, Orbán will try to get permission to purchase Russian energy resources that are under sanctions, The Guardian reports. He will also try to persuade the US president to meet with Putin, according to media reports. The office of the Hungarian Prime Minister confirmed that the dialogue between the politicians will provide an opportunity to outline a sort of roadmap that could lead to a US-Russia meeting. There are several unresolved issues in the negotiations between the US and Russia. If these issues can be resolved, a peace summit in Budapest could take place within a few days. And from that moment on, depending on the agreement between the parties, a ceasefire and peace could be established. Viktor Orbán, Prime Minister of Hungary, in an interview with Magyar Nemzet. The United States is seeking to end the war in Ukraine, and there has been progress on this issue. This was stated by US President Donald Trump during a conversation with the press. He noted that 3 months ago, his administration brokered a peace deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And he emphasized that this is one of 8 wars that the United States of America has ended in 8 months. We
are striving to end one more war, if possible, between Russia and Ukraine. So far, we haven't succeeded, but I think we've made significant progress on this issue.
Oil exports from Russia have dropped significantly after the United States imposed sanctions on Russian companies Lukoil and Rosneft. Donald Trump stated this while answering journalists' questions during a working dinner with the leaders of Central Asian countries. Let me remind you, the day before, the US president also said that after sanctions and tariffs from Washington, India has mostly stopped buying Russian oil and is now purchasing raw materials from the Middle East and the US instead. Meanwhile, Hungary's only oil refining company, MOL, has announced that it is ready to give up Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, this statement, made on the eve of Viktor Orbán's visit to the US, was a turning point. After all, for many months in a row, the Hungarian Prime Minister and MOL insisted that the country had no alternative to Russian oil. Now, however, the company has stated that if supplies through the Druzhba pipeline via Ukraine are cut off, a backup option could be another pipeline from Croatia, which, according to MOL, could cover 80% of the needs of the oil refineries.
Subscribe to The Gaze and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.